Hello, hello, my babies. How are we today? What's been cooking and going on? All right, I think this is a good angle. At my parents' house tomorrow, we're visiting the dentist. But I want to start with something today. Uh, I think today has been exceptional. For the sole purposes, I've decided sometime this week that I wanted to walk around the city, and I literally like circumnavigate the city. And our city is not as big as normal cities because like Lebanon is tiny. But it took me 3 hours and a half to almost to kind of like go around it. And I did it. And by the end of it, by the time I reached the house, the one thing that like because I started from the house and I got back to the house, the one thing I kind of got to kind of consider the most was the fact that I actually have time to do this stuff. And it felt very like the whole purpose of me wanting to do this was to kind of like put something bigger than what I normally do because every day I kind of like walk for 45 minutes and just kind of like use that as some form of anchor of feeling productive, like I did something new and different. And it's the frustration from like programming for the past 3, 4 weeks. It doesn't matter how much you do, you always because you're always like kind of building on top of what you did and you're getting new ideas. So it keeps changing, keeps changing. So the one thing I actually asked myself, like, am I programming faster? And no, am I programming differently though? Definitely. Am I programming even better? And then when I asked myself that question, it felt like as if like something kind of like sank in. And most of my frustrations were because I kind of was rushing the project to be done. But the truth is, the beauty of, I don't know, maybe the present or just like kind of like enjoying what I'm doing. I was feeling like time was a constraint and I felt like it was kind of like slipping. It was frustrating because I kind of wanted to see it go through. And then, even though I'm doing everything and being consistent, I still didn't feel like I'm doing enough. And me asking myself that question, am I doing things differently and better? That kind of like made me realize how much I've improved and how my thinking towards the project itself started kind of like changing from like, how do I do this to if I were to do this, how would I want it to be presented? Which is a beautiful form of like my mind expressing itself differently because of like the actual consistency that I've been adding onto it every day. But so on top of all of this, I kind of like felt today was more of a I literally just had nothing to do but think, and most of the time that no, I had nothing to do but think, but I couldn't because like most of the time I was focused on walking. And I was like, okay, walk like this. Oh, you're walking differently. You're raising, you're slouching, you're doing this, like, focus on the breath. And it was just kind of enjoyable for the sake of it just being done. And I remember every part of it, and it felt like everything for me because it was like, all right, I made it this far, so this is technically like 1/4 of the way, and then oh, this is technically half the way, and this is technically 3/4 of the way. And as I kept doing that, I realized like every target I put, regardless of how frustrated I am, my momentum stopped being something that I'm actually actively doing. It became like the standard. And by the end of it, I my mind automatically started applying this kind of like feeling of everything kind of like clicking because once you have different targets to know where the end result is. And when that is kind of like clicking, how everything kind of just becomes a normal occurrence. So you don't really have to think. And anytime you are thinking, you're adding something new to the table. Which was kind of like a beautiful difference shift in how I look at what I'm what I'm approaching. And the reason I say that is because, like, I'm sure all of us are trying to do stuff, but every once in a while we kind of like forget how we forget how much we have, like, how more qualified we've become towards it by just attempting it and like being consistent with it and just like thinking about it and considering it and like considering the day. And that we should allow ourselves like more of the time that's not spent on it for us to explore different things in order for just that tension from it to kind of like dissipate and release itself. Fun times. 5 minutes just to tell you about my fucking day, right? But it's funny because, like, today's video is adventures in self-discovery, exploring the consistent activities that pop up from monotonous behavior. What the fuck? Okay, so like, here's the thing, because I read this stuff and I decide if I want to do them or not, and it feels like if I'm if I'm flowing through videos, normally what I do is I read them. Like, okay, so here it is. This is yesterday's video, right? These are yesterday's videos, the ones I did. And then this one, I wanted to do these ones, but then I was like, I'll do them tomorrow because I did enough. And it became the theme of today, any way I look at it, because now this is the video that I wanted to talk to you about. But me describing today came out in this way. And I did not read this before I started working. I started explaining my day because I did not want to read and then start. I just wanted to kind of like tell you what was happening with me, what's so different today, let it out, and then basically go to the video and see how it goes. But my train of thought is always kind of like driven by the targets that you're putting on yourself, correct? Because like now, I wrote these at one point 2 weeks ago and a couple of weeks ago, and my goal was to do them. And then basically, as I move through these videos, I'm kind of getting closer and closer to them. And it feels manifesty, right? It feels like tingly in a manifesty way, because every single video that I say that I want to write about kind of has a certain theme that's applicable to the day. I don't know if this is a weird thing, but like the beauty of it is because like my videos kind of like dive deeper in a circular motion into different kind of like aspects of what I'm trying to do. So it feels like every time I'm thinking of something, it's a layer down, or it's just like more bringing something to the surface for me to explore. And I would explain this more as a whirlpool. Like, Bill, are we familiar with whirlpools? It's like a tornado, but for water. And what happens is like something that starts at the top of a whirlpool kind of like gets sucked in and slowly, 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 eventually getting to the center of the whirlpool, which is like at the bottom of the sea. And ideally, that's when you kind of like grab onto something and you don't know what it is. So you discover everything about it and then slowly dive deeper and deeper and deeper until like the whole thing kind of like you grab it. And once you grab it, that's it. You have full dominion over the entire space. The difference between a whirlpool and a tornado, the tornado starts from down and sucks everything up, while a whirlpool starts from up. Well, I think the whirlpool starts from down as well, but like it brings from up to down, while a tornado from down to up. You can also think about it if you want to think for more from like a natural spatial kind of thing, like the sky. We can think about it from an eagle's perspective or maybe a hawk's because it like kind of roams, 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 and then it goes down to its target. But adventures in self-discovery and exploring the consistent activities that pop up from monotonous behavior. And the fun part of this is because the mind, I think, gets bored, and all we the brain specific or the mind specific the brain specifically as an actual mechanism kind of requires its input and requires its kind of like its output. We either consciously output it, or what happens when we sleep at night, we dream. So that's the mind kind of like going, the brain going to like outputting all the stuff, the processes that and the things that it's been like absorbing. So effectively, what we do is when we start a new activity, there's that like getting to know it part. And it really depends what kind of person we are, because a lot of people are always trying something new, or a lot of people are kind of like discovering new stuff. And my theory on this is time. And because the more you're doing something, the like, okay, so let's try to delve into an experience of it. If you experience something the first time, it's exciting. If you experience it the second time, it's not as exciting, but it's still cool if that's exciting for you, right? And you can think about it in both ways. It's like, it's a traumatic experience. Like I, uh, when there was a time when there were bombs happening in Lebanon, like every week. And the first 2, 3 months, like every week, 2 weeks, there would be a bomb somewhere. All of us would freak the fuck out. But after like a couple of weeks, what happened was like anytime there's a bomb, we know that for another week created a pattern in our minds. So there's a bomb. Okay, after for the next week we can go out, do whatever it is because we don't have to be scared anymore. So that's a traumatic experience that we got used to, and eventually we started basically playing in between the notes. Exciting experiences are the same because like suddenly the same exciting experience that you were waiting for years becomes mundane. Why? Because like that's basically it. It's an experience, and we either add to it or not. And I think a lot of people create different things when they find boredom, and a lot of people discover different things when they find boredom. And I don't know if I am the kind of person that kind of like discovers stuff, because I'm more of a, if I want to learn something, I have to start from scratch to understand why it became a concept to begin with. Whilst I know a friend of mine, for him it's like, oh, this is how you use this, and then he starts using it specifically to do different things, and that's how he gets creative. Whilst for me, I start getting creative on how I use it instead of like the things I use it for before I start kind of like developing it. I think that's the mundane. That's why the consistency, like every day you're doing something, you automatically get better because you kind of like are always seeking the extra efficient thing, the extra thing that keeps it exciting, that makes it feel some kind of way. That's why like doing the same things at the gym become boring unless you're that type of person, which kind of doesn't necessarily mean you flow into more things. You just kind of like flow better in what you're doing. It's an experience and it's a video. Hi.